Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us tonight. We are live on Metro TV, of course, from our studios here at Rage in Accra. And this is the bottom line. On the bottom line, we say business at the speed of thought. This is where you get the best business analysis on the whole of your airwaves. Tonight, we have a very important topic to discuss. We are looking at labor issues in general here in the country, but precisely focusing on child labor. I'm sure you've monitored the statistics revealed by the Ghana Statistical Service on how child labor or the exploitation of children for economic activities is ongoing in the country. It would escalate or be elevated to the point where we have scores of young people leaving the shores of Ghana for greener pastures. I'm sure you hear a number of issues about drones of nurses who are moving to the United Kingdom, to Canada, to the United States of America, and so on and so forth, to get into their health sector. What is happening in the country, and how are we able to prevent some of these things or to create more opportunities of employment for these young people? And we'll also explore the child labor bit. This is the bottom line with me, Kwesi Free. We'll put our number on the screen. If you have any concerns, please put them up. I'll try as much as possible to read them to our guests tonight. If you want to stick and stay with us, we will be right back. Right, so you all come back from the break. This is the bottom line, and today is a special occasion. I've already told you that we are going to look at issues of child labor and unemployment in general, how we are able to solve unemployment here in the country as a people, but particularly there is child labor, and I have this sticker here. I don't know if we can project this or project this in the course of the discussion. It says, "Children are children and not workers. Stop child exploitation now." And I'm picking this from, okay, so there we have it on the screen. Let me put it up well. And this is from the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations. So children are children and not workers. Stop child exploitation now. You have a lot of partners: International Cocoa Initiative, World Cocoa Foundation, Windrock, IJM, Finatrade, or Fair Trade Africa, Fair Africa, Rainforest Alliance, NORAD, International Labour Organization, and UNICEF for every child. So that said, we'll come back here into the studio, and there is a release by the Ghana Statistical Service that I'll try and read for you. But just before we do that, we have some slides that we will project to you. I'll come back to the statement, and I'll get straight into my script, which I would read for you. This one says, so nationally, I think that's the same script I have in here. 419,245 or 54 children aged 5 to 17 years were engaged in economic activity during the 2021 population and housing census. So this is the breakdown. 76,439 children are aged between 5 and 9, and this is scary. 76,439 children are aged between 5 and 9. Now, 153,189 are aged between 10 and 14. And then 189,626 are aged between 15 to 17 years. Wow. And so nationally, 153,773 children are aged between 5 to 17. This is the breakdown. So it starts from 5 to 9, 9 to or 10 to 14, and then 5 to 17 years engaged in economic activity, had never attended school. Now, take note that after 10 or 12 years, you must have been in the senior high school. So if from age of 5 to 17 years, who are engaged in economic activity had never attended school, it means they had not been to a basic school. Kindly, let's go back. Let's go back to that data. Let's go back to that slide. It means that a good number of them or the whole of this percentage, even though there is free senior high school, have not gotten the opportunity to do a basic school, that's a primary, to do a junior high school, and to even get to the senior high school. So 98,748 children aged between 5 and 17 years engaged in economic activity were also attending school during the census. So these were people who, for example, in the very rural areas, or even in the cities or modern areas, will close from school, maybe by 2, and get by the road to sell a pure water or to do some kind of activity that would earn them some money. You have in the rural areas where the galamsey is rife as well, some of these people who are forced by their parents to still get some education, basic education, still go to school, close, and come back into these galamsey sites. Let's do the next one. So this is the district distribution. In Kwanta North, it's in the Uti region. It says 9,707, and then Krachi in Chumuru also there, 7,598, and Nanumba North Municipal, 7,598 as well, same figure, had the highest number of children, 5 to 14 years, engaged in economic activities. These 3 districts had 21,726 children, representing 10.8% of all children 5 to 14 years engaged in economic activity. So that's the district. That's the district distribution. I have the data still here. We have some for Western North, which said 2,088 in the Western region. That is the regional breakdown. 4,179 Central region. 4,834, and so on and so forth. In all, about 30 out of the 261 districts had more than 10% of the children 5 to 14 years engaged in economic activity. 10% of the children in certain districts. There are districts that have only about 50,000 people in the district. So if 10% of the 50,000 people in the district are engaged in some kind of economic activity, well, you want to limit it to the age of 5 to 14. Then you have close to these figures, which are alarming. Let me come to the studio and introduce my guest to you, and I'll begin the discussion right away. But let me also remind you that our number is on the screen. If you have any concern at all, you can put it up to us. Please, no calls. No calls. We are not able to pick up calls. Kindly send us a WhatsApp message or an SMS, and then we'll try and put it out. I have to my immediate right, Issa Mushin is a principal labor officer of the labor department. Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us. I hope I got the name right.
That's true.
I got
Good
it
evening.
right.
Yes, please.
Right. So let me come to my lady here. Bernice Bucci is a senior gender and international officer at the Minerals Commission. Good evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.
I hope you're doing well.
I'm good.
Let me begin with Issa, and I'll come to you right away. My very first question, we may go into the statistics later on, but the statistics are very alarming.
Yes, thank you, and then for the opportunity, and I greet your cherished viewers. Mm-hmm. It's very alarming, it's true, and that is why probably the theme for this year's commemoration is intensify against child labor.
Intensify the fight against child labor.
Yes.
Do it fast. Do it now.
We should do it fast, and then we should do it now. And to the extent that even if you look at globally, we are talking about 160 million children. Mm-hmm. And this, in fact, represents 1 in every 10 children globally. Mm. So it's actually alarming. And if you translate that into Africa, we are talking about 1 out of 5. That is how the data represent. And so the data, as we are showing, is the reason why we would like to intensify action against child labor.
Let me ask you these 2 basic questions, and that's where we are beginning the conversation from. And I'll come back to ask you very similar questions. First of all, I have seen the data running up to 17 years of age and so on. Someone will have cause to ask. We want to bring it down to the very lay person who is watching us tonight. A 17-year-old a child? If a 17-year-old is a child, how do you define a child? Who is a child?
Well, basically, a child is somebody below the age of 18.
Not
Yes.
15?
No.
So, yes, I had thought that a child is someone between 15 years, because below 15 years, because there are some constitutions, maybe across Africa, that allow people above 15 years to work.
Yes.
Maybe do internships. And even from the senior secondary schools, we have children who are allowed to do internships, sometimes paid internships. So if I'm allowed at the age of 15 to do, let me pick that from you. How do you classify me as a child?
Yes.
And I'll fall within this bracket that we are talking about.
Okay, so in the labor laws, there are segregation. We have something called light work. So a child age 15 who finds the need to work can be paid. And even that is with standards. He shouldn't work above his strength or her strength. And then a child age 13, sometimes when you've lost both parents and you are living on other people, naturally as children, they want to try and maybe learn skills, carpentry, it could be anything. So there are those laws that governs it. But the question is, how many of these employers are aware of it? And that is why both of us are here to educate the public that if a child is engaged in light work, there are certain things you do not allow the child to do. For instance, with light work, the child should not be exposed to any hazardous work, such as where they sell drinks, cigarettes, or clubs.
So my mother or my father or a family member operates a restaurant.
Okay.
I am at the age of 15 or 16. I go in to help him or her as a form of intention. Maybe I want to learn customer service. I have a passion in interacting with people, managing relationships, and so on and so forth. So I decided to go in there and help. And they obviously would sell alcohol or sell cigarettes. Would you define that as child labor? And based on that, I'll come back to you to define child labor for me. So let me ask you that.
Okay. And for me, so let me quickly pick on what child labor is. Child labor is any work that is above the strength of the child, that affects the child's education and the child's health. Now, so any work that, for instance, if you are 15 and you have to work, there are a number of hours the child is supposed to work so that he can be allowed to go back and attend to his homework and other school duties. It is also very, very important. Now, introducing the child to alcoholic beverages, sales of such would introduce the child into all kinds of deviances. So it definitely, as a parent, you should not encourage your child to engage in that. It is classified as a hazardous work.
So the last one, you will not allow your child to work in quote unquote Adunko Bitters, Casapreco, and those production companies for alcoholic beverages if they want to go and intern and learn production. Maybe I want to be an engineer. I have to go to the machinery side to
There are
learn.
other things the child can be engaged to, not necessarily that aspect. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
So you because the child's morality matters. Psychologically, he needs to be, and of course, this bit of okay, you allow your child go into such beverages, and sometimes he wants to try, and they said if you are not 18 years, you are not qualified.
But they are not allowed to drink on site.
Thank you. So if that is the case, why would you introduce the child if you don't want him tempted? Because these beverages have very good smells, right?
But they are not allowed to drink on site when they are on the premises of the
You
company.
call it not allowed, but can you control that? That is why it's safe not to introduce the child in that, but other aspects of that work.
What then is not child labor if a child is within this age bracket and has to work? So maybe you define the child labor again. She did it. You want to add that to it, and tell me what then is not.
I should rightly put it. Child labor is any activity or work that a child undertakes that affects the child's health, the child's education, and then the child's moral or total upbringing. Okay, so it's not just one aspect, but it's looking at the total development of the child. Now, we have various laws that guide all this. Ghana is a member of ILO, and we have Convention 182, Convention 138. All these conventions, with their recommendations, specify what children can do. Now, we have also taken it from that level and domesticated some of these laws into our own laws. Even our own constitution talks about protecting children against hazardous work. Okay, Article 28(2). And then if you look at the Children's Act, it also talks about what work children can do. As you put it, age 13, you can do light work. 15 years, you can be engaged full employment. I mean, you can go to full employment. You were asking a question, if you have a restaurant and your child's, yes, you have to consider all the situations, because if you just use one, you end up putting the child in a situation that the child will not be able to develop totally. And if you look at the definition of child labor, if any work is impeding the child's education, the child goes to school, come back, do a lot of work, the child cannot undertake homework and other things. So you have to look at the work again, because the child is not benefiting from school totally. But the law has also provided for the number of hours that children can work during school hours. And
so this is a very important information you are putting across. My next question was going to be how you are able to identify or differentiate between what is child labor. At what point would you classify a kind of work, even if it's in the formal setup, as child labor? But I think that's where you're going. So let me allow you to land there now.
Yes. So I mean, we do a whole lot of. If you look at the tools that we are using to identify who a child labor is, we have some children who are at risk, not necessarily in child labor, and we have those in child labor and its worst forms. Now, we are looking at the nature of the work, the time you undertake that activity, and whether it affects the child's education, the total development, and then the morals, and then the health of the child, because she mentioned hazardous activities that children should not be engaged in. And so if you look at all these things, we can come to a conclusion that this child is either at risk of child labor, or this child is actually in child labor, or its worst forms. And so and we consider the age. The age is very key to the discussion of child labor, because we also look at the provisions of the laws that give us guidance as to what those age groups can do and what they cannot do. So if we are collecting information on these children in terms of what they do, what we do is we match their ages against the activities. And we have what we call hazardous activity framework. That spells out the activities that children can do given their different age groups. Okay, so in that context, we are able to determine who is in child labor or who is not in child labor in that score. So it's a whole lot of parameters that we use in determining.
And all of this is done through the population and housing census, or how do you gather these data?
Okay, so we have what we call Ghana Child Labor Monitoring System.
Okay.
It's a setup that allows us to go through a process, collect information, and be able to report. Now, it is set up in a way, we have administrative setup of it, and then we have the application that helps us to also collect information from these children. So we have at various levels, we have committees. We have the National Steering Committee that takes care of all child labor issues generally, and we have the regional child protection committees, we have the district and that of the community. Now, at the community level, these committees are empowered to be able to monitor children. And what we do with the monitoring system, the app that helps us to collect data, it's under review, and we are hopefully, it will also be launched very soon, is that we have set up mechanisms in it That allows us, once we collect the information, we are able to tell the status of each child. And this system is supposed to have a link to SWIMS, Social Welfare Information System, that they are using now. And once we do the identification, they have to go through case management at that point to determine what is in for them, what can be done to those children. But if you look at the way the system is set up, once we are able to gather the information, it will help us to identify these children, their age groups, and all that. That is why Ghana Statistical Service, the age grouping that they give is what we use, actually. But our own is not a survey per se, but we contact these children and we monitor them continuously. And one thing that makes the data scary is that, sometimes is the way probably we look at the data. We are not considering the frequency of how these children are doing the activities, which we are now trying. We've agreed with partners. I mean, that the way forward now is to look at some of these things, because some of the children probably they just did it once.
And you cannot consider that as child labor? Maybe they did it
in some circumstances you can, but in other circumstances it's probably not just in child labor, but probably the child is at risk of entering child labor. But sometimes we lump all these, children together, and then the number is very high.
Let me bring it down to our country here, and let me come to you, Benes, and maybe from the data you have, from the work you have done in the space for the length of period of time that you have done all of these, what would you say are the very prevalent or the areas, economic areas where you find children mostly doing child labor or being caught up in child labor?
Thank you. So clearly, we were in the Eastern region somewhere last week, Thursday, and we see a lot of children in that space. And of course, poverty is one of the
causes.
Yes. Clearly, our interactions with them, it's really terrible. I mean, you see children walk kilometers to school, and clearly, from what we saw, they play. They play, and they don't care what time they get to school, because somebody should be doing something that is not being done. Transport, in order to get these children to school on time, is not there. And it's no fault of theirs. Of course, they must live their life. So what of the teachers? Those days, we had this very good relationship with our teachers. They have a way of aiding us, get to school and get to school very early. And of course, if I go to school and hunger becomes something to deal with, I would leave and go into any kind of job that earns me some money. Some of these children end up taking care of their sick parents. So poverty is what is actually...
Poverty is the single most important cause.
Exactly. And of course, parents, these children in question have parents that perhaps are unemployed. Because if they were gainfully employed, or they had some very good, means of employment, would be able to take care of these children. But it's not there. So
what are the trade areas they get in? Do they become, for example, conductors for buses, as we call locally car mates? Do they become street children, as in they sell things or products on the streets? I know in the Eastern region, for example, there are lots of pockets of palm kernel production units where they produce palm kernel oil and so on and so forth. Do they get in there to participate in those activities to make... What trade areas do they get in? Let me start with you.
Cocoa.
They get into cocoa farms, agriculture.
Yes, they do. Major.
Do they get into Galamsey as well?
Some parts of the Eastern region, yes. I hear, yes. Usino parts from my few checks and my interactions. And it's becoming worse. And of course, whatever business is at what area, you see children engaging.
So there's
what
no
their parents
a particular trade area that they get engaged in. Whatever thing that will earn
exactly.
them
Once
some
there are
amount of
okades,
funds.
yes, they do it. If they have okades present in that area, they get
on.
They get on. If it's farming, that is what they get on. So for children, what they see is what they engage in. Yeah.
Let me come to you on the same question. Which
Okay,
trade areas and the
think-
causes also? She mentioned poverty. She mentioned hunger. And what other things should we learn about?
I think the agricultural sector, okay, and then we have the services sector. Services sector relating to domestic work. You know, these are the, I'm not saying the other sectors is not predominant, but these are the major sectors that you find this happening. Now, you know, agricultural sector is very, very broad. And in Ghana, we mostly hear the cocoa subsector and all that. But you see, we coming from government think that it should not just, we shouldn't focus on agric and just cocoa. There are other agric activities that children may engage in. And with domestic work, sometimes it's very difficult for you to identify these children. Because, for all you know, even at your home, you have somebody helping you out in the house, and it's gated. We can't enter there, you know, as inspectors, as community, you know, child protection members. And so, with this, all these issues, we still think that, yes, poverty is one, but we also have other parents that have a different view, though the number may not be that huge. They have a different view as to what child labor is. Whatever you say, they will still want to, I have my children and I need them to help me.
So this is one of the questions coming. The same point that you are making. My name, Bon, is my name from Bolga. So his name is Bon. I was actually looking at it properly. And he says that I run a drinking bar in my house where I have my children help me after school. Is that child labor? Bon from Bolga sent in this one.
Okay, first of all, we don't know the ages of the children.
Obviously under the age of 17.
Well,
obviously.
okay, it means we are assuming that they would have been below the age of 18.
Yes, exactly.
But we just explained that with a bar, children should not be, you know, prone to alcoholic
Exactly.
drinks.
So
at that
the
age.
point here from Bon in Bolga would be that whether I put them in the bar or not, I own my house.
Yeah.
I have the shops in front of the house. I am selling alcohol to people. So obviously they get exposed. Whether they get in the bar or not, whether they get to sell or not.
No, that is why they are children, and they need his guidance. Because if he doesn't guide them as children, they may fall victims, and tomorrow they will blame him as a father.
Exactly.
Because, you see, the moral aspect that we are talking about, children should be able to grow knowing that there are a lot of opportunities for them.
Yeah.
And so if you think you have a bar and for you to engage your children to work, probably they can work behind, but working in a bar that they sell alcoholic
They're
drinks
exposed.
will not be good for children. And so that is why, as a parent, why don't you engage adults to work in place of the children? Bear in mind that whilst children are working, adults are losing jobs. You see, we are talking about...
That's a question I was going to ask before.
Yeah.
So the very first question I put down was, how do we have child labor? In the face of, and I was going to put out this data early on, but I think because of time we may not be able to. We have said that unemployment rate is hovering around 1.76 million out of the over 32 million that we have in the country. And I have that data also from the Ghana Statistical Service.
Yes,
and that's a good number of percentage points if you consider that with the population we have in the country. And you have this number of children, 419,000 engaged in child labor, whilst adults are looking for jobs.
Yes.
How is this happening?
That is the point I was going. So assuming the gentleman that sent the message
Noise.
I don't know the number of children that he's having working with him. If he could replace them with adults, it means we'll be heading somewhere. The number you just mentioned, 1.76 million children are in child labor. Imagine this number is replaced by adults. And we are talking about decent work now. You see, so if children are out of this child labor, adults are going to be engaged. And then the more adults are engaged, the more productivity can go up. Because
But getting children out of child labor for adults to be engaged, it is not, I don't know the significance of the numbers, but it is not all of these numbers that are engaged or that can be replaced by adults. If we are talking about 419, some of them are probably menial jobs that adults can do or get paid for.
Yeah. That's very true. I mean,
I'll come back to you again on that.
for me, there are times, okay, so the issue of the mindsets here comes in. Now, some think that if I engage adults, I'm going to pay so much. Now, these are my own children. I don't need to pay them. And even if anything at all, I'll tell the child, I pay your fees. You get it?
Exactly.
I buy her. So sometimes, adults find a way to dodge responsibility. And I don't think it's doing.
So employers do. Employers find ways to dodge
Of
responsibilities
course,
as
of
well
course.
and to make payments.
Of course. So until we accept responsibility and say that no, much as I think it would be a smart idea to engage a child in this work, it's not for him. This child should be excused to focus on his education. I think it's time we allow our conscience to work properly.
But what do we do as a country? You started by giving me data. Let me ask you this and then I'll come back to. You started by giving me lots of data and in the child labor setup, and you started by talking about regulations as well.
Yes.
Most importantly, regulations on child labor, I don't know, acts or regulations.
Yes,
and you were mentioning all of them.
Yeah.
We realize that if we're able to solve it, employment will go up. Social nuisance will go out of the system and so on. How do we go about this? How do we solve it? Is there any regulation that stops child labor, and who is enforcing that?
You and I. I'll start from that.
This is advocacy. What we are doing is advocacy.
Thank you. Minerals Commission is trying to do that. It has set up agenda decks. We have come up with a number
you
of
are the head
frameworks.
of?
No, Monalin Anochibempa is the head.
Okay.
I'm the child labor focused person working with child labor department. And so what I'm trying to say is that the Minerals Commission is so passionate about ensuring that we are able to regulate what is going on, especially with the rate of galamsey in these areas and children involved in. One of the thing is that we are struggling to even accept the reality, the existence of the subject, that child labor actually exists. Sometimes it's because we as adults have been through certain very hard times. And of course, because of that, we don't see anything wrong seeing these children go through same. But the question is, the things we went through, did it make us better? And can we do better? If we've learned better lessons, then it is about time we allow all the state institutions whose focus is on working hard. For instance, we have partners like ILO, like World Foundation, Cocoa Foundation. We have the International Initiative. We have a number of these partners working at various communities to ensure that remediation gets to these children, especially at the cocoa area. We've been able to engage them to make it an integrated approach. That is, when they get to the communities and they see cocoa, children in cocoa, and they see other children in mining or fisheries or kayaking and others, they must make sure that there's provision for all, so that wherever the presence of such, partners are, they are able to redeem quite a number of all these factions in the community to make sure that the fight is holistic. That's the point I'm getting at. And I'm saying, as Metro has chosen to be an advocate for this, other
media houses should
do same, so that the voices can go very far. And I think if you are able to break these, discussions down to the languages of the hearts of the people, perhaps it will make better sense and it will go very far.
Let me bring that same question to you. And I was going to ask about enforcement, but just because she's with Minerals Commission, that question is specifically for you. There are the regulations, there are everybody trying to help, and you say that it should be the job of, she says, it should be the job of everyone in making sure that we find a means to stop child labor. But what are you doing? You are the principal labor officer. To stop this, if there is enforcement, how are you enforcing any regulation?
Thank you. You know, in our work in the Labor Department, we do what we call establishment inspection. And we do it.
Kindly indulge me. I'll come back to you on that, and I'll allow you to complete. But I need to take a quick break, and I'll come back. But please do make sure that you are sending messages. I'm hearing that instead of the messages, most of you are just calling. I'll try and read the messages. Our number will be on the screen pretty shortly. Please do send us messages. It could be SMS or it could be WhatsApp. So the number is 0241 569 408. 0241 569 408. It's only for text. Please do text, either SMS or WhatsApp. Please do not call. We'll be right back. You're welcome back from the break. This is the Bottom Line. We say business at the speed of thought. So we are discussing labor issues, and today we have stated it's the Labor Day, and we have shown you this sticker, and we have all become advocates now. So Child Labor Day, we say children are children, and not workers. Stop child exploitation now. I'll come back to Issa Mushin on a point that he was making, and he is the principal labor officer at the Labor Department. And Issa, let me allow you to flow now. And let me still remind viewers that it is only text that we are receiving.
The enforcement. You know, we at the Labor Department do what we call establishment inspection. And this is done both in the informal and in the formal sectors. And we actually engage employers and employees wherever they work. I mean, wherever it's called a workplace. And any workplace is where you have two or more people that undertake economic activity. And so we can enter there and then conduct labor inspection. And so all workplaces, it could be a farm, it could be whatever. But once it is titled workplace, we can go in there and then do establishment inspection. And this gives us the opportunity to talk to workers, to know what is going on. We talk to both employer and then the workers. But the bottom line is, you know, we are trying to enforce regulations. We are trying to enforce workplace compliance. And on both sides, you know, the workers have responsibilities, same as the employer. So we try to look at both sides to see what is happening. And so we are able to identify gaps at the workplace. Sometimes minor things that employers should take note of, and others too do not. Especially when sometimes, you know, when this HSS, when they complete, they just run into the job market to look for jobs. Sometimes some of them 17 years, 15, and they want to work, you know, hoping that once they qualify for university, they will have something to, you know, stand on and pay their fees. So yes, the law allows them to work. So we check all these things, and we look at the schedule, that the tax that they are given at the workplace, and to see whether it commensurates with their ages that they are using to work. And so for enforcement, this is what we do. I must say that our numbers do not allow us to reach all the corners. However, we are trying very hard to reach, the large, population in terms of workplaces. But you realize that one challenge that prevents us from carrying out this efficiently, let me put it that way, even though we are being tooled now, there's a lot of capacity building, a lot of there have also been supply of motorbikes for us to use to do this kind of inspections, especially those in the hinterlands. They can go to farms and all that. So it's an encouragement for us to be able to do the inspections and to be able to identify all these workplace infringements. I call them workplace infringements because if we abide by the provisions of the laws that we have, we will not be here talking about child labor. That's the bottom line. And so for me, enforcement, sometimes it starts with us. We have children working with us in our homes. They do not go
but
to
school. From your department in the Ministry of Employment and Labor Relations, what is the level of enforcement? I mean, all you have mentioned is, I would say, some kind of, I'm finding the words for it, but treating people, trying to get people to understand, trying to coax and pamper people who are perpetuating something which in the laws is illegal.
Yeah, it is.
So why do we pamper business owners? Why do we pamper people who are allowing these to fester?
I think the police are in their parts. We have a DSP, right? That's Mr. Mike Barr.
Yeah,
who
that's
is part of the
anti-human trafficking.
Exactly, and a number of people in that regard has been arrested.
We don't pamper.
And jailed, actually. Jailed. I mean, I'm not talking about waiting to, it's been done. So enforcement is working. But the question is, are you ready to report it? There are instances where it's your dad who is taking you through that. How do you, if you report him, how will society look at you? So until we all accept responsibility and say, this is no good, this is child labor, let's do something about it. I see a child going through all of this, I pick a phone, I report it to the police, or I call
do you get such
labor
cases? Do you get such cases?
In fact,
in the very extreme ones, there are ones, unfortunately my time is up, so let me put this last to you. There are very extreme ones where children are abused, beaten, and all of those things, which, I mean, in the face of it, even if you want to run away from the definition, like I started asking you from the beginning, everybody will agree that this is child abuse, even beyond labor. So apart from the labor, there is abuse. When you get such cases, have you prosecuted? Have you gone to court? That's what I mean by the enforcement.
We used to prosecute, but with the coming in force, the Labor Act, that powers has been given to Attorney General. So Attorney General does that on our behalf.
Do you report to the Attorney General?
Yes, when it gets to some level, we have levels of handling such cases. If a district officer, a case is reported to a district officer and you handle it, you are not able to, meet both sides, you take it to the regional level. And the regional office will also take it to our head office. Sometimes we even refer cases to Labor Commission because they have some powers to be able to, sit on cases. And so that is how it is. Formerly, we used to prosecute and like the police, but now we don't have it. So we can't just go straight to the courts. But we are advocating that once the Labor Act, I guess, is under review, so they should give us back those powers.
The prosecutorial
so
powers.
that as part of our processes, we should be able, because Attorney General has a lot of cases they are handling, not really...
yes, Attorney General has a lot on your hand. And let me ask you this.
Once the Attorney General is at that, we have a lot of religious leaders or bodies who can, intervene in some of this. You can also intervene in some of this. A lot of opinion leaders in communities have the right to speak. And the social welfare does very well in this.
But that's the society you started talking about, because in these societies, the same places, you would have the chiefs, even if you go to court or you report to the police station, coming to beg for the perpetrators of the illegality, or coming to sit around the table and say, oh, let's overlook it, or let's have other ways of addressing the issue.
So now that takes me back to what I said.
Yes, exactly.
if we continue to live in self-denial, this issue won't be solved. So until we all accept that these abuse should end, this is child labor, we'll keep going around the table. So let's accept responsibility. Let's do the right thing, and let's do it fast, because these children are the future leaders.
Let me read just one message for you. And wow, the messages coming in are very lengthy ones, but my time is up. I'll read that, you answer, and then I close. My producers are mind. Please, I would like the lady and the gentleman in the studio to discuss how they can support a community-based tongue most beautiful initiative in the fight against teenage pregnancy, menstrual and personal hygiene, child labor and comprehensive sex education, etc., as project for winners of the pageant into basic schools in the 3 Tongue districts. So I'm sure North Tongue and South and yes, districts to enhance girl-child education in the area. David A. Texan from Bato sent in that one. I'll try and see if I can read. Wow, this last one. Factor that derives child labor. Okay, let me jump this one. This is too long. This is a message from someone. Back time from Bato 1. You answer that and I round up. My time is up.
Maybe not directly to the texter, but to say that the systems that we are setting up is to give all children the opportunity, to grow and to become useful adults in future.
Exactly.
And so the setting up of the child labor monitoring system and child labor free zone concept will allow all these processes to happen, such that the system will be able to identify these children and provide some remediation for them.
Issa Mushin is a principal labor officer, Labor Department. Benis Bochi is a senior gender and international officer, Minerals Commission. My name is Kwesi Free. Thank you very much for watching, and those of you who sent us messages, we'll still address them behind the scenes. Thank you very much. My name is Kwesi Free. Don't forget that we are still doing the advocacy. Children are children and not workers. Stop child exploitation now. You can get a sticker anywhere you meet them and any of the labor offices across the country. Right. Good evening.